And the audio in the new Call of Duty is being criticized left and right, and I'm sure you've had situations like this. An enemy appears out of nowhere, you should have heard him miles ago because he ran across the whole map to get you at full sprint, but you didn't hear anything. And no matter what platform you're on, the audio problem is discussed everywhere, so a lot of people are noticing it, but what exactly is the problem? That's what we want to look at today. We want to take a closer look, analyze what exactly the problem is, or how exactly the audio works. Maybe draw some conclusions that could help you in your gameplay, or find out if the audio is really completely broken. But before we start, two things to know. I have run the recording clips through a compressor, just so that you can hear the steps better, because with a compressor it sounds like this, and without, yeah, exactly, that's why I'm using a compressor. So in reality it's much quieter, keep that in mind. Also, the configuration I'm currently using is bass boosted headset in the audio settings, because that is the best setting for Footsteps currently. And with this knowledge we go directly into our first test. Here the idea was to kind of figure out the basics, how the step sounds, how it works, how it changes, and so on. And there, one thing already stood out. Let's see if you can hear it too. The audio the second time was much quieter. But why? Very simple. On the second run we were on the same team. The steps are different depending on whether it's an opponent or a teammate. This was important to know for the upcoming test, because depending on that we have to do the test as teammates or as opponents, or at least keep in mind that it would be different. The next test was to find out if Warzone produced the same sound as the multiplayer. That's basically the same game, you would expect yes. But all other tests wouldn't make any sense without testing that first. And there are indeed differences. Let's see if you can hear them. It's very subtle, but if you listen closely you can hear that the sound in the multiplayer is a bit louder. The sounds themselves are pretty similar, so the sound waves are almost identical, just a bit louder. This is important to know because now we can make our tests in the multiplayer, which is a lot easier than doing them in Warzone. And now, knowing all of that, we wanted to directly test the most prominent problem. There are thousands of clips of people who are suddenly pushed from behind while they are keeping an angle inside a house, and that's exactly what we want to recreate. And here's the result. So as you can see, we hear absolutely nothing until about 2 meters from the door. Then almost immediately after that, doors slam open and well, you get killed. Because if you have planes and stuff around you, you're not gonna notice the couple of steps before the door. Because again, keep in mind, the audio is heavily compressed and it turned the volume to maximum. Would I be shooting my gun right now? That bang would be so loud that my ears would fly out my skull. And well, after that, probably 3 months like this. So what you hear in the video is not even close to what you would hear if you played the game yourself. So I hope so, at least for your health. But this test was also a bit unrealistic. You rarely sit in front of the door. More often you would be upstairs holding an angle and then getting pushed. How does that sound? So yeah, even worse. You can almost only hear the door, and assuming you're standing right by the stairs, you're dead before you can react to it. That's pretty intense. And based on those tests, a theory emerged. But to confirm or disprove it, we needed one last test. What if I'm in a house, so to speak, but I see the opponent, so I have visual contact with the audio source? Here we go. So as you can see or hear, you can hear the enemy coming when you have visual contact. Exactly the same behavior was also when I did this with Windows. As long as we see the enemy, we hear his footsteps. It makes kind of sense, but in real life you also have reflection and the game seems to fail at recreating those. But well, after that we did a couple more tests and this is basically the result or the theory that came out of that. If we are in the open and somebody runs towards us or away from us, it is pretty good, I would say. Here's the comparison. So that is not a problem. In the open, in my opinion, the distance is quite okay, how far you can hear footsteps and also the volume. The problem comes when we are inside a structure of some kind. You would expect some of the audio to be absorbed, as walls usually do, but just some and the rest to go through. But that's not what happens. The audio gets completely blocked. Only when you get into a certain area, so 2 meters away I'd say, only from then the sound begins to penetrate through the wall. Before that, it's really nothing at all, as if the sound gets simply blocked by the wall until you get past this zone. From there on, the sound gets transmitted through the wall, dampened of course, but still transmitted. Outside this area, nothing at all. This is also confirmed a bit if somebody is running inside and you are on the outside. You can hear him running inside as long as you're inside his radius, those 2 meters, but not if you're just one step further away. So this could mean that pretty much every house has a certain area where within this area sound waves are transmitted through walls and outside this area not at all. At least footsteps. This isn't true for weapon sounds. And this zone is relatively small. That's the current theory. Maybe you have your own, put it in the comment section below if you have a better idea. But with this knowledge or this theory, we went into Warzone to make a couple final tests. Is there something that we could change in our gameplay to help us with this problem? To check that, the first test was a closed window and I'm watching the other player. So I'm in a direct line of sight with the audio source. This is very important. And here's the result. So what now if I destroy the window? Does it get louder or does it stay the same? As we can see, it gets louder a tiny bit. Unfortunately, this only applies when you really have visual contact to your opponent, because if you don't, even with an open window, you won't hear anything, as you can see here. You can hardly hear that your own house is getting pushed at full sprint. Again, of course it's a teammate, so the sounds aren't as loud as an opponent's, but the audio is heavily compressed and the volume turned up. A shot now would blow your ears off, so that's as loud as you'll ever hear some footsteps. So in conclusion, you can't really do much. You can destroy all the windows. That might help in some situations, but certainly not in all. Furthermore, I would never recommend be at the ground floor, because if you're upstairs, you get at least 1-2 seconds a head start when you suddenly hear footsteps below you. Because inside a building, the audio works pretty good, with the exception of stairs, but that's another topic. But other than that, the audio is simply not transferred far enough around houses. It's also not loud enough. Now you might argue that's good or that's bad. I think that's where opinions differ. I personally think that sound is insanely important in a shooter, especially in Battle Royale. If you can't rely on sound, yeah, what is positioning even for? If you can't do those because you can't hear steps anyway, so what is even the point of those? I can just as well play the multiplayer there. Okay, that might be a bit drastic, but you get the point. It's tough when you can't rely on audio. The big question now is basically, how can this be fixed? Making the audio louder should not be a problem for Activision. But what about this area around houses that kind of blocks the audio? Is that an engine issue? Is that just a configuration? What is it? Because if it's a configuration, then, well, easy enough, just extend it. If it's an engine audio issue, then it might not be fixable or would take a lot of work. And that would truly suck. Especially if you're already traumatized from other video games where exactly this is the prominent problem. Greetings to Tarkov. But yeah, that's about it about this audio video. I hope you found it helpful or insightful. Anyway, don't forget to thumbs up. Let me know what you think in the comment section down below. Subscribe for more. Und für alle Deutschen, das hier ist der englische Channel. Das gleiche nochmal im Deutsch mit dem TV am Ende. Take care and see you all in the next video. Bye bye.